live streamed. Here it is. It's the live stream. Hello, folks. I hope you can hear me. If you can, just as a little housekeeping thing for like the way we're going to format this, for you all who are in the Zoom room, I'm going to ask to please keep your cameras and mics off for this first part. Colin and I are going to have a little facilitated little interview conversation. I'm finally putting that journalism degree that I hate to good use. And then in the second part of this conversation, I'll ask folks to turn on their cameras and their mics if they'd like, and we can turn into a more like informal Q&A. Well, I suppose just as formal as it was. Hi, hello. I'm so happy to be joined today by Colin Wolfe. Um, my name is Laura Lewis. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of Playwrights Atlantic Resource Center. My pronouns are she, her. I am here on the lovely shores of Jabuktok. You can't tell because I closed my curtain because the light is coming in a really inopportune way. Um, but yeah, before we begin, I'd like to mention something that is going on. Listen, okay, Colin, I see that you have a dog in your background. There's a cat that's going to be crawling all over me. I was out of town last week and he's like having some major separation anxiety. Um, so before we begin, I think that I need to speak on something that has the potential to pose an existential threat to the arts in Nova Scotia, where me and many of PARC's members are located. So, 2 weeks ago, the Nova Scotia government, under Tim Houston's Progressive Conservatives, unveiled their 2026-2027 budget, which featured $130 million cut from grants, in many cases eliminating them altogether. Many of these are arts grants. I'd like to focus directly on some of the cuts that stick out the most to me. The elimination of sports development in Aboriginal sport, the elimination of artists in schools, the elimination of artists in communities. 50% slashes to the Arts Equity Funding Initiative, the Artistic Innovation Program, and Creative Collaborations, among many other arts grants. 50% slashes to the Community Museum Assistance Program and Screenwriters Development Fund. 50% cuts from the Mi'kmaq Cultural Activities Program and Mi'kmaq History Month Program. 50% cuts from the African Culture Activities, Gaelic Culture Activities, African Heritage Month Proclamation, and the Community Maui Development Fund. 100% funds for the Mi'kmaq Services and Afrocentric Summer Scholar Program in the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development, as well as significant cuts more broadly to arts operation funding and to graduate studies programs across the province. And the complete elimination of 9 separate grants in the Office of Old New Affairs. And many more, totaling $130 million. $130 million, which is a catastrophe for individuals, but a pittance against the $1.2 billion deficit that we have been plunged into by this government, which inherited a balanced budget. These cuts are an attack on our cultures, our communities, and our histories. They are an attack on our own desires to learn in the present and on our collective futures by destroying our children's capacities to learn and grow. These cuts are moreover racist and serve to divide communities and pit us all against each other for the scraps they offer. We at PARC stand in solidarity with Indigenous rights protesters, with arts protesters who were protesting yesterday. We were all there. And we urge our membership in other Atlantic provinces and across the country to hold your own governments to account and not accept this kind of treatment. So this is what I said last week before our books and brunch session with Erin. I said Erin Hancock. She's not an artist. She works in co-ops with Erin Shields. Now, yesterday, Houston has brought back $53 million in grants, specifically those to seniors, disability communities, and Indigenous and African Nova Scotian education. None to artists or the arts. What Houston didn't count on is that there are Black artists, there are disabled filmmakers, there are Indigenous writers, there are senior citizen musicians. There are Nova Scotians of all backgrounds who recognize the importance of having the arts in schools and communities. We will not allow this to divide us. We stand as part of the Greater Halifax Arts Coalition, demanding not a revised budget, but a new one entirely. Anyway, Colin Wolfe is a Métis MNA theatre maker from Mohkinstsis, Calgary, Alberta, on Treaty 7 territory. Wolfe completed a BFA in Dramatic Arts from the University of Lethbridge in 2014, followed by 5 years making award-winning and nominated theatre on the prairies. Wolf is a co-founder with his sister Kaylee Crow at Thumbs Up Good Work Theater. Wolf moved to work. Wolf moved to White House in October 2019 to serve as AD at Gwandak Theater. Wolf's newest play, Coy Wolf, explored a story about grief and hope backdrop by land displacement and is available for purchase through Playwrights Canada Press. Hi, Colin.
Hello.
So Colin, I just said a lot of words, but I'm wondering how would you introduce yourself if you were asked to, which I'm doing.
Uh, yeah, I would say something like Tansi, hello, bonjour. My name is Colin Wolf. I'm currently employed as the artistic director at Gwandak Theatre Society in Whitehorse on the traditional territory of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and the Tan Quechan Council. I live in a wood heat cabin. You pretty much see the entire space that I live in. That's all of it. Me and my wife and my dog and two cats. And we're out on in Mendenhall on the traditional territory of the Champagne Ajax First Nation. So we're about 70 kilometers outside of Whitehorse, um, up on a cabin above the tree line on a mountainside. It's really quite beautiful to live here. And it's a wood heat cabin, so I might have to go throw some wood in the stove at some point during this conversation. Um, so that's where I what I currently do. Like mentioned, I'm a co-founder at Thumbs Up Good Work Theater, a little company I founded with my sister to make plays in Calgary and the prairies where we saw a bit of a gap. Other than making Treaty 7, there was kind of nothing as far as Indigenous theater was concerned. And there was really nothing with like a working class modern art modern indigenous cultural expression. It was a lot of traditional arts, which is not bad, but just wasn't the medium that we were working in. So we founded a theater company and went on to do a bunch of productions as Thumbs Up Good Work Theater. Yeah, and I'm Métis from the Métis Nation of Alberta. I got my Métis Nation Alberta sweater on. And my genealogy is approved by the St. Boniface Cultural Society, which, if you know about Métis stuff, that's the highest approver in the land for to be counted as Manitoba Métis, Red River Métis. St. Boniface Society has to approve you, and I have that check mark since I was born. So any people who know about Métis stuff, now you know I'm legit. And if you don't know about Métis stuff, maybe you just learned something. And you can Google more about that on your own. That might be how I'd introduce myself.
Great. This is a pretendian free zone. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I don't know if I've mentioned this. I'm Mi'kmaq. I'm from Glooscap First Nation. We don't have something like that society, and honestly, it sounds like it could be useful for us. That's really interesting. I didn't know about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, basically, if anyone says they're Métis and they don't have St. Boniface Cultural Society, or it's not an interest of theirs, it's really like they're not. They're not. And again, not to say they're not Indigenous. I don't really know. I don't know everyone's history, but they're not related to us if they're not approved by the St. Boniface Cultural Society, whoever
Hmm.
they are,
Hmm.
you know. Anyway,
I have a question for you that is not related to, well, maybe it is related to writing because I think that or writing and your environment impacts a lot of things. But you were just describing where you live, and I was wondering, could you show us what it looks like out your window? Because it sounds breathtaking.
yeah, well, it's pretty gray right now. So
Okay.
first of all, it's the light, it's barely sunrise has barely happened.
Right.
Quite gray. So let me see.
Oh my God.
You can kind of see mountains across the way, but it's quite gray
Ugh.
right now. But we can see when it's not gray, and maybe it'll, as the sun comes up, the clouds will clear during this conversation, and I can show you a better view. But it is um quite stunning. We can see down three different valleys, and we can see mountaintops. And it's the Alaska Highway runs right down the middle of the valley,
Ugh.
and like at the back of where the community is. So we just back onto Crown land. So for hunting or snowmobiling or anything like that, camping, we can just off the back of the property. And it's a 5 acre plot. We rent it. We don't own it. We're poor. So we rent. But it's really beautiful. It's fun. It's almost off grid. We have our own well. The water's not drinkable. It's full of uranium, unfortunately. But the government installed a purifier in the middle of town. So we haul blue water jugs of drinking water up um, to our cabin every couple weeks for there's one right there that we drink out of. That's where our drinking water is stored.
Yeah, you don't want to get those Spider-Man powers.
No,
It's more
no.
trouble than it's worth.
It seems like a lot of responsibility.
Well, with
Or
great power
both?
comes great responsibility.
Exactly.
Colin, how did you're a theater maker,
Mhm.
and so the way that we're framing this series of interviews is I, living in the Maritimes, it's not isolated in the way that living in like the territories might be. But I don't get to see a lot of like theater that might be part of like big national conversations. So instead, I was reading a lot of plays. And I thought that, oh, we could have this series where we talk to folks who have recently published plays. And that can be a way for people to access theater even if they can't like see the production. So we're like softly framing this around your play that came out recently, Coy Wolf. But I wanted to ask you, like, how did I know for me and for a lot of other Indigenous people, like storytelling in many forms is such an essential part of culture and how we relate to each other. But I wonder, like, if you could tell me when you started writing, or alternatively, when you started like how you engaged with storytelling as like a young person.
Yeah, well, as a kid, I was really shy at first, and I couldn't talk to my teachers or didn't really make friends. Like I would like couldn't talk to anyone. And then, but I would come home, and my sister and I would do little plays for our cousins or whatever, or for our mom and dad or whoever, just whoever was around, just little silly performances. And my sister would always come up with what we would say and do kind of, and I would just be part of it. Um, and so that was kind of the first engagement with like creating a story and showing it to people where like we're not like doing someone else's play, we're just coming up with it. But that was like fun kid stuff. And of course, your aunties and your younger cousins and your mom is into that when you're a little one. But when you're 18 and you're like, I'm gonna go to school to be a theater maker, and your mom's like, what? You're gonna do what? For real? So I think like really writing, I didn't like writing, especially because it was I felt school for me was still there was a lot of handwriting and they were resistant to the use of laptops and typing when I was in high school still. And then university hit and I was able to use a computer because like my writing's really messy. It's hard to read. I've taken several writing classes and it's like never improved. I've tried hard, it's never improved. And I struggle to read it often as well. I believe it's called dyscalculia. Is that right? Dysgraphia. It's called dysgraphia. My wife is upstairs and coaching me through the things I don't know. It's called dysgraphia. Means you can't write good. It's an ADHD sub thing. Um, Whatever. But typing, I was like, wow, I can type almost as fast as I can think, and it looks good, and I can read it later. And editing isn't a fucking pain in the ass, and I'm not smudging pen and stuff all over my hands. And so I liked writing in university. I took playwriting courses and stuff like that, but it never like led to anything. Again, when I graduated school, the first couple things we did at Thumbs Up, like my sister wrote the plays, I got the grants and kind of did the producing, but my sister was writing the play. So really like I was writing little stuff. I was involved in a lot of other people's writing, but Coy Wolf was the first like I'm gonna write a play and it's gonna be about like a story that I want it to be, and I'm kind of gonna drive the writing and development of it on my own. So it was kind of my first big attempt at that, knowing that like I've written a few things in university and we've done a bunch of like small play festivals, but none of that felt like mine or like a very necessarily serious attempt at writing. Like I think Coy Wolf was the first time I was like, oh, this is something I really want to write. But as a storyteller, right? I've done lots of improv. I've done lots of creating characters. So like that has always been part of it, part of my work. But yeah, writing is actually um always been there, but as an active part of my life has been kind of relatively new. Yeah. And then now I'm writing like four other plays. So it's like doing Coy Wolf, it like became a bigger part of my life.
Okay, amazing. What this brings up so many things. Okay, so yeah, you work with your sister, and when I was reading Coy Wolf, I saw that your wife Sydney also worked on Coy Wolf. Like, how does working with family influence like your creative process?
In fun and interesting ways. It's different working with people you're really close to because there can be more friction, but you can also collaborate really quickly in shorthand. So like one of my favorite things about working with my sister is that like we can to the same endpoint quite quickly because we've worked together a lot. Same with working with my wife. Like when we did the production of Coy Wolf, it was like we're trying to figure out who to direct it. And I was like, I think I need somebody like I really trust and who really like knows me and has kind of been around the development. And so it just made perfect sense for it to be Sydney, who was kind of sitting in that chair. Because she kind of knew all this stuff and all the reasons behind like why this, why that, why is there a ghost mother sound that happens in the wind in the production, like why that was important. So I think working with family is really interesting because, like, I also used to run a gardening company, and I had my cousin who worked for me. Like, that's just always part of it. Like, not in like a, it's funny, not in like a nepotism way, because like I never worked with my parents. I never did their jobs. They were like accountants and stuff, so whatever. Um, but I just I've always really liked working. And also there was a time where no one else would work with us. We started in theater and we were auditioning for stuff and doing all sorts of stuff and nobody wanted to work with us. And so it was like at first it was like it's just me and Kaylee and my girlfriend at the time and her boyfriend at the time. Like, and that's who we have. So we just started making plays with that group. And then now, like, you become the AD at another theater. My sister wins a big award. You become these other things. And then people are like, you used to work with your siblings a lot. And it's like, well, maybe I wouldn't have if we had just gotten roles in other plays. Maybe that wouldn't have ever happened, and we would have never even developed this thing. So it's an interesting, like, it was kind of as much as I love working with my family and team like that. It also is just like the nature of who's available when you have zero resources, right? Who wants to perform in your like we were doing shows in our apartment with like under the condo board's nose. So like who wants to be breaking a bunch of rules with you, but the people who you really trust, like your family and your really close pals like that.
You
Yeah.
mentioned, you kind of alluded to how your parents responded when you said that you wanted to go to theater school. Could you expand on that a little? What was that like?
Um, Yeah, my mom she was like, well, to be a teacher, right? And because my sister was going to school to be a teacher as well, in Edmonton. And I was like, yeah, to be a teacher. And I went and I signed up for an education degree with like a theater focus and like a phys ed minor, right? And then in my first semester, I was like, fuck that. And I just switched to a full BFA program. I didn't tell my mom right away. I just did a couple of years of the BFA program. And then there was a point where she was like, so you're not taking any teaching classes or any phys ed classes. And I was like, no, I'm just doing a BFA, mom. And I'm gonna be a theater person, and that's what I'm gonna try to do. And she was like, I love that you're following your dream, but you do like you're gonna have to figure out the money. Like she's like, you're gonna have to figure that out, right? Like, she was like, I'm not gonna help you too much with that, which is why like, I finished university and then it was like acting was like living on people's couches, different place every month. You have to live in five, and I'm sure it's like this out there too, but like in order to actually make a career of it, you've kind of got to be in five communities to piece together enough contracts to have a year of work. And then any money you would have made, you lose driving between communities and paying double rent and da 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 da. Like it all kind of whittles away. And after a few years, you're like, wow, I'm surviving as a theater artist, but I'm really not making like any progress in a career. It just feels quite short term and chaotic. But she was pretty skeptical at first, and then she was quite impressed. Like she passed away before the play was published, obviously, but she saw me become like an artistic director at a theater, which she was really proud of. Um, she saw me do lots of cool plays. Like there was a few plays she saw, like she saw Reasonable Doubt and in Saskatoon and some other shows I've been in where she was like, oh, I see, I get it now. Like you're a theater maker, you're a performer, you're a storyteller. This is a thing that you're really good at. And that's when I was like, great, okay, I've kind of won her over, but she was really like, you've got to figure out the money side of it on your own. And that was I think that was the big kind of like thing. I don't think she really fought me on too much of the rest of it. She was a little mad that I had slightly deceived her as far as what courses I was taking. But
Yeah,
I go rogue. It's just kind of it's what I do.
that's incredible. Years. That's wild. Congratulations. That's an incredible gift.
Yeah.
So you obviously Coy Wolf is a lot about this like story of grief and influenced by the passing of your mom. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I was reading the forward of it, and I think you said in it that you started writing it before your mom passed, and then it was kind of like that was the impetus to like really finish it.
Yeah. Well, I was writing it and the whole plan was like I'm going to interview all my aunties and I'm going to ask them about growing up Métis um and about because I was researching Métis history and I was researching how that's similar to like coy wolves and like mixed the way mixed wolves were like displaced and murdered over time. So I was at first the play was like kind of a conservation play and it was going to be a lot more about wolves um and I was going to like interview my aunties and kind of contextualize this all within Métis displacement in the prairies. And I was working with like a Métis historian and a genealogist and stuff. And I was going to interview my aunties and ask them like the same list of questions that I worked with Yvette Nolan to come up with a list of questions. And my one uncle, and I was gonna write all that down and then kind of start working that into the story somehow. But I like talked to a bunch of my aunties, and I hadn't talked to my mom yet, and then she passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly in January 2023. Um, and I was just like, well, shit. I had a whole list of questions that had like come up from stories from the other aunties where I was like, I wanted they were all like, your mom will tell you more about this. And it was like, nope, doesn't get to happen, waited too long. Um, and she was only 64, so like and it was pretty unexpected. Um, but it it like I don't know. I don't know if that was like the impetus for finishing the play or the play was like the impetus to like stay alive. Do you know what I mean? Like I was like she passed away and like the presenter that I had for the fall was like, we can put it off by a year or a couple of years or and I was like, God, if I don't have this, what like I have nothing. Is what I felt like. Like I was like, if I don't have this play to work on, I really have nothing. I'm just gonna be sitting here in my house all spring, all summer thinking about it, as opposed to trying to transmute the grief into something, right? And I really like, I kind of wanted to give up, right? There were parts of me as well that were just like, ugh, you're writing and it's like it's terrible and you're like having to cry or whatever. Um but then like you write something really good. I was reading it. I know like again, that first spring after she passed away is pretty blurry, but like I was reading stuff I had drafted for it in the summer, and I was like, "Oh, this is something." I was like, "I'm good. This is something. This isn't a pile of shit that we're gonna show one time and that's gonna be it." I was like, "This is kind of um, a powerful thing that I think I'm writing." And that really helped me get through. And obviously, my wife helped me get through all of the grief and all the writing hurdles and everything. Um, but it really, I don't know. Yeah, sometimes it's like obviously the play wouldn't have been like this. The play before was so much more like it also was like about revolution and the one guy he busts down the council door and he's got the document that's gonna save everything and it's gonna be perfect now. And there was a lot more like I don't know. I was like at first I was trying to figure out how we redo. You know that scene from The Matrix and they're underground and it's like oof, oof, it's like the rave at the
Yeah, yeah,
underground.
yeah.
I was trying to like I was like how do we do that in like a wolf underground context of like this like resistance and I was like there's all this kind of shit like that and that all just like went away and flushed out of the play afterwards because the grief thing was like well life is going on, right? Like this war in Ukraine is still happening, indigenous displacement is still happening, like we all this stuff is still happening and you just have to deal with grief now on top of it. And so that's really what the play switched to being about was like, okay, all this stuff is going on. You're in the middle of a revolution. You're a displaced people. You're all of that. You're learning your history and you're carrying this grief. And kind of like, what's the thing you need to focus on, right? And so I really think I wrote about like how I felt at that time. And like um we performed the play. I think it was only 6 or 7 months after my mom had passed away. And the end scene was like at the 1 year mark. So I was also like, I was writing out a future that I wanted, like that was something too, where I was like, what does this 1 year anniversary look like? Um, again in this like not us as humans context and the characters like it is me but it's not me. So like in their context what does this look like at 1 year since the passing, but it really that obviously her passing really influenced the play in like a million different ways, right? Like all that unserious stuff just like drained out. And I know like at one point it was like 90 pages, and I think the final version was 45. Like we really simmered it down to its core parts. Um, yeah, anyways, kind of losing my train of thought.
Incredible. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Do you do you everything you say, I'm just like, oh, and I can ask about this and this and this. Do you remember what any of those questions were that you were part of that kind of like initial format that you were going for?
I have them saved somewhere, but I'm not going to pull them up. I think it was like one of them was, what is your favorite song growing up? I was asking them
Mm,
about music because I did a whole playlist. It makes me cry now because it has a bunch of my mom's favorite songs, so I never listened to it. But I have a whole playlist of like the songs they all kind of recommended. Um, I asked, I think a pretty simple like, what was it like growing up Métis? Like, how would you describe that? And then I asked them a couple questions about their dad, my grandpa. Um, and my uncle Glenn respond. It's so funny. My uncle Glenn, he I sent him the questions. He didn't want to like have a call or nothing. He's also a forest guy, so he's kind of a quiet guy. Um, and he just I Facebooked him the messages and he just answered in Facebook. And oh yeah, it was one of the things was like, what makes you feel connected to the land? And that was the only question he answered. He didn't acknowledge any of the other questions, and he just said, I always feel connected to the land because I'm always on the land. And I just was like, oh, it's so smart. Like it's so short. But like, and so yeah, those were the questions. As far as I remember them, what was it like growing up Métis? A couple questions about their dad, and how do you feel connected to the land? What's your favorite song? I think we did five questions in the end. Um, and then I also left space for them to tell me whatever they wanted. And like one of my aunties, Cindy, she like kept Facebook messaging me more and more stories, which like a bunch of her Facebook message stories that she sent to me ended up being like actual lines in that final scene in the play, right?
mm,
There's so much stuff where I was like, I want this scene to be where this anti character is like really comforting him. And I was like, but I'm really not feeling that much like, I was like, I don't know what they say because I'm not feeling the like, I can comfort someone. I'm feeling that I need it. But then, like, of course, then your aunties are there, your cousins there, your wife. So there's all these wonderful people in your life supporting you. And so I pulled some of these lines from like things that they said. Um, and like I think one that comes to mind in particular is that line of like, I will not sugarcoat it. Grief has been a part of this family for a long time. Like that's actually something my auntie said to me. And I was like, but like it really like, I don't know, it helped me a lot in some interesting ways. And I really hope the play would help other people dealing with grief. Or if you're just dealing with, revolution and displacement and all of that, then like you can focus on that side of the story. And, later on when your mom passes away, then you can read the play again. You'll be like, oh, the grief. I see.
yeah, yeah. I think I'm definitely going to be reading this whenever my mom dies. Um, God, knock on wood. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
in a long time.
Yeah, in 20, 30
Yeah.
years. Um, are there any writers that influence you as a writer?
It's interesting, like influence in like people I look up to and talk to, like my sister and like Yvette Nolan, Joel
Mm,
Birnbaum. Those are people like in like real life who I talk to. But as far as like because the other thing that you asked that, and the other thing it makes me think of is like, what do you read? And
mm.
like as far as like writing that's influenced me, it's like lately I mostly just listen to space trash, like Warhammer 40K space trash audiobooks.
Hell yeah. Oh
Like
my God.
yeah, like the grim dark future, and they're like, "Dum, dum, 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 brother," and it's like, it's pretty bad. Like it's not good writing half the time. Dan Abnett is really good writer of them in that book series, but yeah, just a bunch of space trash is what I listen to. But when I think about like people who like influence me artistically and who's writing that like maybe not that I want my writing to be like, but whose writing I read and it was like, wow, an experience that I've seen. Like I think Yvette Nolan is really a big one. I didn't like know about Indigenous theater until I met Yvette Nolan, and I was like, we have a whole definable part of the industry that's us. I had no idea. I thought it was just me and my sister and making Treaty 7 because it was like their first year, and I learned about them, and then in the fall I learned about Yvette, and then that spring my school offered Indigenous theater class where we read a bunch of Indigenous plays, and it was like, oh wow. But I had no idea. There was no context for me of like Indigenous theater. So I think Yvette ended up being a huge one. I read like anything by hers that I could get my hands on as soon as I knew about her. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm obsessed with that. Um, and I know her like as like a creator herself, but also as a really incredible dramaturge. And is dramaturgy like a part of your process?
It is. Yeah, yes, I don't get too bogged down with like one dramaturg all the way through who like uh I don't know. I don't. It's like really short spurts, right? I would have like little spurts where it'd be like I'd have a week where I'm sending to Yvette and talking to Yvette and rewriting something and sending to Yvette and talking to Yvette, and then it would be like 3 months where it's like it's just me kind of hammering away at it, and then I would do like a week with Nathan Howe where I'd be like, okay, I actually want Nathan's perspective, because they provide like really different things. Sorry, my cat and dog are having a moment. Can
They're
you, Adam?
wonderful.
Okay. Um, my dog loves the cats, and the cats do not love the dog, but the dog is fascinated by them. She thinks they're just the most beautiful little creatures. Um, so I go to like Nathan Howe for a bit because they provide different things, right? And Yvette talks to me about it, and she's like, oh, I love the romance, I love the exploration of grief. Nathan talks to me about it, and he's like, these two characters are serving the same function in the play. Let's combine them into one person. It doesn't need to be two different characters. Like it's just like really different types of feedback. And so I find like I really pop between people. And I don't necessarily keep a dramaturg around too long because I often kind of get what I need. I fix all the structural stuff, and then I needed help with a different thing, so I would move away from them. You froze. Is that me who froze, or is that you who froze? It's probably me who froze.
Oh,
Hey.
okay. I wonder if that was you or me. Oh well. You pop between different dramaturges because they offer different structural stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty much the crux of it. At least I did for Coy Wolf. And for my current writing, I haven't we're in the month where I'm meeting with people. So but I kind of built a similar structure. Um yeah,
Cool. Yeah, as much as I feel like sometimes for job security, I want to say, yeah, you should work with a dramaturge all the time. Um, yeah, I don't know. It can be really, sometimes when you're writing a new play and you get dramaturgy too fast, it can just like crush the joy of writing.
totally. And like da 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 da. And like I was at Banff Playwrights Lab with it as Indigenous artist in residence. So it was also like I had a lot of like really awesome dramaturgy there early in the process that felt like supported me a long way through, if that makes sense, you know. And like, I feel I feel like the work I did with Teresa Maley, who's the Métis historian is like um was more long term than like the dramaturgy work, right? So like that kind of counts in some ways as dramaturgy because it's like contextual research on um Métis displacement, but not really in a theater context. Like she wasn't that as interested in that part of it. Um, but yeah, again, it comes down to resources, right? Like I probably would have a dramaturg, a whole team on call for 8 months if I could, I would have a whole team, but it's like we only, you get a grant, you got $600 for dramaturgy, you got three friends who each could use $200, and Yvette, you want to kick her something, she's been helping you a long time. So that's the other reason I try to spread it around a bit is like, um, I know there's lots of people who need stuff.
So you're the AD of Guandoc Theater.
Yeah.
The prospect uh of yeah, I wonder if you could speak to how you balance being an administrator and being a producer with your artistic activities.
Through great force of will. Um, through hiring good staff.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, I mean, when I first took over at Guandac, I pretty much canceled all my acting gigs and all my projects. And for 2 years, I just did Guandac theater and nothing else because it was so much to learn. And it was founder transition, so there's all sorts of bumps and friction points. But it all came out really strong, I think. And I had a lot to learn, so I needed to just focus on Guandac. And honestly, in the last couple of years, Guandac's been in good shape from an administrative financial side of things. And so I've had more time to work on my own work. And that's really where Koi Wolf came from. It was like I got a development grant and I was able to take time away from Guandac because that's the whole thing is like we can afford to live if I work at Guandac my full hours, but that left before very little time for me to do other things. Um, and so like one thing I did at Guandac is I like carved out the fund development part of my role and trained a couple of fund development people who can come in and do it and created some stable positions for them, which really helped me able to because then I was able to write my own grants, right? If you're writing a bunch of grants for an organization and then you go home and you're like, finally, time to work on my grant. It's just like it's terrible. It's fucking terrible. So you know, I don't have the money to hire a grant writer that often as an individual, but I can at Guandac. So I really tried to build Guandac out to be really strong without me in a lot of ways. And then also so that when the new artistic director comes in, they can be um, way more supported, right? And have a bit more of that artistic freedom. But it's hard. Yeah, like it's really hard balancing running a company and trying to do projects because I also produce all the projects that I write and do. So it's like, I'm basically running two companies. And it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of um calendars and force of will. That's how.
I have a friend who is the technical director of an organization, and she was like running herself ragged. And the executive director of the organization went to this little miniature store and got her this teeny tiny little, like half-inch high little jug. And she gave it to her and she said, "This is so you don't forget to fill your jug." Um, in terms of like caring for herself and like nourishing
Yeah.
herself. So, like, I wonder what are things that you do to fill your jug?
It's interesting because after my mom passed, all the stuff I liked, I stopped liking, right?
Mhm.
Like I just got all your hobbies get weird. Um, so, but some of your hobbies get really good, really interesting. So I got really into fixing trucks after my mom passed away. Um, because like there's one that we bought, she helped me buy in like 2013 or 2014 that I still had, right? And I was like, so I like she passed away and it was like I that summer I worked on the truck. Like I worked on fixing the engine, I worked on doing the timing belt, I worked on all sorts of stuff. And just taught myself. I just bought the Haynes manual. And so that's something that I found really nourishing, right? It was like it's not arts related or anything like that, but it's like while I was working on Koi Wolf, I was also repairing a truck, having never done that before, ever never my dad has brain damage and didn't really pass on any of that kind of knowledge. So it was all just like fully new to me. But that was really nourishing. Honestly, like when there's no clouds on this view, that really helped me through like, living in a place where there's a beautiful view and the sunrise and the sunset every day is like stunning, except for when it's cloudy. So not every day, but most days, um, it's pretty stunning. And being like so far out here and so far out on the land, like I can just go outside and sometimes there's the northern lights and sometimes there's elk in our yard and sometimes there's a bear and our dog is here who just, anyone who has a dog, it's just like they're just little balls of love and they care so deeply for you. Um, and my cat and my wife, like there's all that stuff that I think like fills my cup. We go to the hot springs. My wife and I go to the hot springs here a lot. Um,
You have hot
um,
springs?
yeah, yeah, we do. And they have a hair freezing competition. So when it's -40, you put your hair in the water and then you can shape it into all sorts of interesting stuff. And people with long hair have done all sorts of really wacky things. And each year, the best picture gets a free pass to the um, hot springs for the next year.
That's incredible.
Pretty sweet. Um, Yeah, the hot springs are nice. But yeah, like, and like I got a snowmobile that I ride around on. I go outside. I started a wood harvest company because I already cut down trees to heat our home. So I got a permit to cut them down commercially to heat other people's homes and to sell. And so I harvest in an area that's like it's all beetle kill. So there was pine beetles that came up and killed a bunch of trees like 30 years ago. But then the temperature, if it goes below 50, it kills all the pine beetles. So there's these trees that have been here for 20 years that are dead, and it's right south of a community. So there's a big fire risk. So they have small operators like me going through and cutting down the dead trees so that there's not as big of a community fire risk. And so that's like a thing that's been filling my cup in a really interesting way of like having having a really like therapeutic feeling activity that's repetitive. It's physical. I'm outside in the nature every day. And every day I go there, I feel like I'm actually doing something that's kind of important as far as like creating this firewall for this community. So I don't know, it's really interesting. Like that's been filling my cup. And it's not arts related at all. And I don't know. I don't know how much arts fills my cup these days. I feel like arts is always something I'm giving to. Maybe like I saw one play in Australia recently, and I saw one play at the High Performance Rodeo this year where I just got so caught up in it that I was like, wow, like I'm amazed. I'm caught up. I love theater, right? I love to watch theater. I don't often feel that I love to watch theater. I like to do it. I don't really like to watch it as much. But um yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing that like, yeah, the arts haven't really felt like a cup filling activity. And part of that is because there's always administration, right? You do the play, even like Coy Wolf, like we do Coy Wolf, we finish it. Everyone's like, great work, you did it. Yeah, everyone does their hug goodbye. All the actors leave, all the technicians leave, everybody leaves, and you have to do reports for another 6 months. And all the reports you have to write, my mom died. Like it's really like, and it's really sucky. Like, and then even on the shows where it's not like that, you're like, you kind of end up alone, you and your dog and your wife and your two cats out in the cabin in the view, right? So, um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the overall of arts is like a cost, but I think that's part of, for me at least, part of like being a good artist is that like you give something, it costs something. We're transmuting something, and when we transmute something, we have to put some materials in there for it to become something else, right? Um, and I think that with cutting trees down, I don't have to do that. I just buck it up. It's just like it's totally different type of brain stimulation than doing artist work. But I prefer artist work. Like if I had all artist career, enough artist work, I obviously wouldn't be cutting down trees. It's to supplement my income. Anyways, there's a bunch of thoughts.
Do you ever experience, like, I feel like you're kind of hitting on this a little, but I wonder, like, as an artist, do you ever experience burnout?
Um, yes, yes. I think reluctantly I say yes. Because I'm like unmedicated ADHD. So like I really if I let myself go a little too fast or too hard, I catch myself burned out. But I again like fighting myself with a calendar really helps. Um, and I don't know. Again, I have messy writing, but there's something about the paper calendar that like the phone calendar and the laptop calendar. It doesn't work. If I can like. I feel like I can close the laptop and it stops existing, but like this is a weight. I carry this with me on my back every day. This weighs a pound. Like, you know, um, it's like a real thing that's there. Um, um, yeah, burnout. That said, like I go camping a lot in the summer, and like last couple of years we've gone to Jamaica over December, my wife and I. So that has also really helped with the burnout, like just not doing the arts honestly for a bit. And again, like even cutting trees and stuff and being like, nice, this is $1,000 worth of trees I cut down today. And it only cost me the gas for the chainsaw to drive out here and one day of my time. And it's like that would be like a week and a half of acting to make
Hmm.
that much money, like so that stuff helps really fight the burnout, I would say. And only like I think in the last 3 years, I've only done art projects that I've like really been into. I don't think there's like a few that we joke about, Sydney and I, that I've done in the past that were just like, I was like, it's a good play. I don't care about it. And I stopped doing those. And I feel like I do get less burned out because I stopped doing theater that I'm not feeling like, yeah, about. Like if I'm not that bought in, I try to be like, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm actually a good fit for this because I'm not that level of bought in. And I can only do that because I have this job at Guandac, because I've started a wood harvest company and we have some other income. Like that is being able to choose gigs is something I wasn't able to do when I started, but it really helps with the burnout. And that's part of the writing my own plays now, right? Is like since doing Coilf, it's like, right, I can do this where I write a play and then I produce it and hopefully it goes somewhere and does more. But if it doesn't, that's fine too. Like, so yeah, kind of reframing some of that really helped with the burnout. Because I think in the early days I was always burned out, you know.
When you find gigs that you're really interested in that like really light your fire, like what is it about them? What are things that you're attracted to as an artist right now?
Da 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 da. Like, is it gonna be fun? Honestly, is
Yeah.
it going to be fun? And so many projects I've worked on my life haven't been fun. And if I'm going to work a job that sucks and isn't fun, I might as well get paid well, you know? Whereas, like, if it sucks and it's not fun and you're poorly paid and the play is about something that you just don't give a shit about, I was like, I just can't do that anymore. So, what I think the things that really attract me now are like, teams of people I know who are freaking awesome and whose work always slaps. Like anything Yvette does, I'm always like, hey Yvette, I'm cutting my hours at Guandac, so you can hire me for something. Um, Joel Birnbaum, I send that message to as well. My buddy Nathan Howe, we're always trying to get something going. Um, so there's like people whose work I really like. Um, um, and then there's like the type of work, like I like new work. I like work that's being like developed, workshop productions. I like helping people finish their plays. Um, um, New work. I like touring work. I've kind of faded on TYA. Although like Coy Wolf doesn't have any swears and all my new plays don't have any swears, I just have faded on specific TYA. I did a lot of that when I was younger, and then now I'm like I'm okay. I feel like there's a lot of running around. You have to lift a thing above your head and sprint across a field. You have to load the set in the gym at 7 a.m. Like that part of it, I'm like, I'm 34. I'm not doing that. Um, I'm okay. I'll rather cut down trees. But um yeah, stuff about climate, stuff about race, stuff that's like that's like kind of futuristically cyberpunky. Like that's kind of what I'm really interested in. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved in Coy Wolf, like it feels almost sci-fi, but
Yeah.
isn't. I don't know, something you were saying earlier about the ending. I really love the ending of that play. Like it because it's kind of like building like a like hero chosen big special boy kind of play. Um and then it turns into something like so much softer and gentler and sweeter and more personal than like a grand saving the world kind of plot.
Yeah.
That was really beautiful.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that came from like ultimately like the Métis lost. We lost both the rebellions we threw. So it was like there's no version of this where I write a play where we won, right? Like so that's like a weird thing where it's like trying to write this thing where it's like it's got to have I wanted it to have a positive ending because I was in grief, so I couldn't have the nose of the plane be down at the end of the play. It had to be up, is what we kept saying. The play has to end with the plane flying up. Um, and it was like, how do we do that knowing that like we lost and got scattered,
Mhm.
right? And it was like, oh, we have to tell the story of people finding where they ended up then, right? Which is why um Sigil and Isidore end up in a new place and they call it Peaceful River. Um, and there's a real place called Peace River, but that's like a big oil town, so it's not necessarily the same.
Not so
Um,
peaceful anymore.
yeah, but it just, and like I know it's like kind of a corny end line too, right? Where it's like, what are you calling the new place? Peaceful River. A little bit different than Chacanelli. Yes, Auntie, a little bit different. Those are like the final lines there. And like it was a little corny, but I was like, it's just enough of like right? That I think the play really needed because in the middle it gets pretty heavy there. I think just in the like, yeah, what do you do? The grief and you're losing the war and all your friends are dying and now your uncle mentor has died and like who the fuck is just this mutt guy who's like got a death wish is your only
Mhm.
guy who's left anyway. Um yeah, and I don't know this like because I'm a big sci-fi guy, right? Like everything I like is sci-fi. It's like Alien and Terminator and stuff. But like the play takes place in the past and was like animals, right? So I was like, I didn't really want to like give them guns. I mean, that would have been sweet if they had like, futuristic implants and stuff. But whatever. I had to produce this, so I had like too many other like aspects I was trying to incorporate, shoehorn into the design. Like something that's not represented in the text at all is like in the production, we had Scottish great kilts, which are these giant pieces of fabric that you can wear in all these different ways. Because my dad is Scottish, and so like I was incorporating that mixed heritage into, but it doesn't turn up anywhere in the text. It's just in design elements in the play. Um, so like I had all this stuff like that, and so I think the thing that I tried to keep that sci-fi in there was this like there's technology creeping through the forests, and
Mm.
these loudspeakers are moving further and further, and like we don't know if it's like a human or an animal who's running the radio. Like what is this whole like town crier radio thing about? Um, and yeah, all the sci-fi stuff kind of landed on that town crier role. But yeah, I'm glad you thought sci-fi when you read it because that's like eh, again, I think I'm influenced more by like sci-fi film than many other things.
I I think we should be friends. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, like I felt like really big sci-fi vibes. I also like when I opened the book, it had that like beautiful map, and it made me think of like The Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia or like The Wizard of Oz. Like, is that what were you involved in like the making of that map for the published script, or was
yeah,
that
I made them include it.
okay,
So,
amazing.
yeah, we made the map for the play. So that was like a prop that the character takes out as like a little version of that map. And there's that part where it's like, Dina gave me this map. It shows these routes that I don't even know about. Like that's supposed to be the map. So we had it in the program and stuff too. And then when we finished the rural Yukon tour, the the co-presenting theater got me like it's about this big printed out version of the map and it's really cool. But it's just Canada. If you look closely, it's
Yeah,
literally just the shape of Canada. And Calgary is renamed
like oh, there's
Cowtown.
none of it.
Saskatoon is the city of bridges, and we just kind of like shifted up the shape of the territories. And that's also trying to show like because in the play, like it's Canada, but it's not Canada. It's wolves, but it's not wolves. It's there's a lot of that, right? Because I wanted to what is it? I wanted to use this allegory to try to get a bit of distance, so that we can tell the story without getting too into like it being too personal. I mean, I know it's like about grief and about my mom passing away, but it being too personal as far as like I think other people's specific Métis stories being told as like a good or bad outcome or something like that. Like there was stuff like that that I really did want to avoid. Um, and like, my mom when I first talked about the play to her, like she didn't want like a family tell all that like just spills all the drama. You know what I mean? Like that's just gossiping about our own family. Like I didn't want it to be that either. Um, yeah. I'm sorry. I've kind of lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Okay, I forget what the question is. I
Great.
also have ADHD.
Great.
Um, yeah. Um, oh gosh. Yeah, I wonder, because you performed in Coy Wolf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you performed in it and you produced it and you wrote it. Like, I wonder, I'm mostly an actor and a dramaturg, and when I'm doing dramaturgy for playwrights, a lot of the time people will be like, "Oh, but I don't know how like this will happen on stage." And I'm always like, "That's a theater's problem. That's not your problem." But I wonder like being involved in the script and also the production in so many ways, like did that influence how you wrote it?
Yes, I think I know what you're talking, especially the Yes, it did influence it. I know you're talking about the like when you're writing the play, don't worry about who's going to produce it. And what does Brian Court say? Always put one impossible thing in every scene. And it's like, what are you talking about? You're killing producers. We hate that. As a producer, that's tough, man. But so like I was always an actor. I was an actor first, and then I learned how to produce, and then I learned how to artistic direct. And so when I was writing, I knew I was like, no one else is going to produce this play. Again, similar to everything else I've experienced in my artistic career, no one else is going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself, figure it out, which kind of is a bummer, but also is great if you can figure it out. So I was like, I'm probably going to have to do this. So I like had my designers picked really early, and I had a pretty like my wife directed it, but like before we decided that my wife would direct it, I had a pretty clear vision of like what I wanted a lot of these tech elements to be like. Um, and so like because when I'm writing, I like I'm seeing it. So this a lot of these images were quite clear of this like town crier and the speakers, and we're gonna have these trees, and the trees are gonna be on sliders or something so they can move around because we're gonna use the trees to reset because there's so many locations in the play, right? There's like 15 locations. Um, and I was like, the great kilts are going to be for the quick changes so that this character can put this on. And we've already preset something here to show it's a different character and then can just walk off stage, undo this button, throw it over their shoulder, and they're back to being this character. Like I had all of that built out because I've done a lot of plays where as an actor, I have to be doing a multi-character track or I'm the single track and there's a different person doing the multi-character. So like I feel like I'd done enough plays that like everything I was writing, I was like, I've experienced a convention that has made this work. So it was pretty easy to just put it all in the play. Um, like like all the town crier lines are pre-recorded. I've been in a play where we've had pre-recorded lines and they time out really nicely. It just takes work. We need them early in the rehearsal. So I knew we had to hire the designer early. And so I did that, which if I'm just writing a play, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But because the whole intention from the start was like, I'm going to be the one producing this. So as I went, I just knew like, oh, I need to start solving this problem before I pitch it to our White Horse co-presenter. Like I need to know how these three things are going to be solved, the many locations, the town crier, and the multi-character tracks, because that's what they're going to push back on. So I need to so I was just like identifying those things. And again, that's all like more producer stuff, but then it would also help me be like, "Oh, right, I need the ending before I need the middle because the company's asking how it ends." So there was also that where it's like writer Colin was heavily directed by producer Colin. But I also think there was a lot of, I don't know, like I had stuff too where the designers would come forward and be like, what if this? And I just straight up was like, no. Like that's not how it's gonna work. You're gonna have to try again because I see it a certain way in my head, and I'm the artistic lead on this project, right? And again, I've never had the privilege of like somebody asking me to write a play and saying they will produce it. Sounds cool. So I just knew from the start. I think that's kind of the key is like that writing a play um and not thinking I'm going to be the one who produces it has never kind of been a thing. Again, even those earlier plays, right? Like the plays my sister was writing, those early ones, it was always like, and then Colin we're producing it first. And the small little 10-minute whatevers that we would write and do, like there was always a like, we are producing this. So um, so I've always kind of written within that. That said, like I do think there are some like I do think you can still really punch above your weight class and try some really cool things out in that like, indie style. It's just I think it's really just bringing the designers in early, which also makes things a lot more collaborative. Again, I never let them change the lines or anything, but like I was like I knew quite early like here are some design elements I want. We're going to need these problems solved really early. Can we just start solving them? And again, that takes people who will buy in that you have really good. So going back to working with like family and people you're close with, that takes people who will say like, yes, I know you only have $500 right now. If we get all the grants, the rate goes up to $4,000, but I'll start for 500 and we'll piece it out as we go, right? Like that takes trust. It's hard to do that with a total stranger, and it's hard to ask a total stranger to buy into your work that much. So that's also one of those reasons I think I'm really like I love to work with like family or people I'm close to. I call it, kin group. I love to work within my kin group because it's all people who like and my kin group's like huge, right? I got people in Whitehorse, Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, Vancouver, Toronto, Regina. Like I've been putting the work in on that front. But it really helps with those having to do that role from the start. But it is hard. I think it's hard being producer, writer, actor, but I love it. Like I feel weird. Um, I feel really privileged when I get to just be an actor, and I'm like, all these other people did all this work so that I get to just be an actor. That's so amazing. And then I also feel really cool when it's like, I did all this work, so I get to be an actor. Like, do you know what I mean? Like whether I feel really privileged in the one, I feel really like accomplished in the other, and I still get to do the cool thing. The thing I don't like in theater is doing all the producer work and then not getting to be involved in the play, which I
Yeah.
feel like happens a lot at Guandac, where it's like you do all the work, you pick the people, they make the play, you show up on the opening night, you thank the sponsors, right? That I love artistic directing, but that part's hard where it's like I don't get to do it. I don't get to be part of the play. Um, yeah, so I think that's part of why the self-producing is such a cool thing for me. Um, and that I think will continue to be a thing. Like I don't, no one's approached me yet and said, we'd love to have your next play at, and I know that's a really rare thing. So again, so far the plan is for all of these plays to be self-produced. These next four that I'm writing. And one of them's coming up this fall. Anyways.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you about that, but I'm realizing that in the loose format that I've established, we should be doing
Renee
Q&A
time.
section now. So I will certainly ask you more questions if we don't have any questions from our audience. But audience members, hello, audience members. It's so good to see you. Um, if you have any questions for Colin, now is a great time to ask them. Well, while we wait for somebody to ask a question, I would love to ask you. Oh, hi, Ted. Do you have a question for Colin?
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Um, Colin, I was just interested in a possibly cultural element that I'm not aware of. I'm slightly au fait with respect to Métis history as told in Western Canada. I was out west for many years. But so the notion of a coy wolf, is that a cultural thing amongst Métis? Uh, like Wisakachuk is a cultural thing among the Cree, this sort of mischief maker and stuff like that. Um, or was just your invention to talk about uh, mixed mixed groups, mixed
Yeah.
peoples?
Yeah, I'd say it's the thing I came up with to talk about mixed peoples. It's because I've always just been interested in like wolves and coyotes. I just always thought they were cool. Um, that's why my wife and I changed our last name to Wolf when we got married. I was always just interested in them. And I'd learned about like coy wolf, like growing up in the prairies, you hear about like there's coy wolves. They're invading our cities. They're gonna steal our dogs. They're bigger than coyotes, but they're as smart as a wolf, and there's all this like talk about, at least growing up on the edge of Calgary and knowing like farm people, there was a lot of like these evil coyotes are gonna come into our town and steal our stuff. And it's like, well, I think we came into their town and stole their stuff, to be perfectly honest. Like, and so I thought that was a pretty decent allegory for indigenous displacement in Canada. And then to zoom in, there's like it turns out I'm blanking because I did a bunch of wolf research during the development as well. And like one of the wolf breeds we have in Canada is like a descendant of wolves and coyotes who created their own little part of their territory. And I don't remember which wolf it was, but like it turns out it's mixed. And so it's apparently also breeding with coyotes at this time to make this other little coy wolf mix and whatever. And I just found that
It's
interesting.
called the
Eastern
it's
wolf.
called the Eastern Coyote. That's one of the things I'm interested about because I'm from the East. It's a We have what we call the Eastern Coyote here. It's about 30% wolf, stable. It seemed to arise probably somewhere in Ontario in the 1930s or 20s, but it swept across New England and the Maritimes in the 1980s, and there's not a sheep left. It had a huge impact socially because there'd been nothing like it before, and there'd been no wolves before. And so when you say coy wolf, that's another term that's used for that particular thing, and it means that very specifically in some places. But that doesn't mean that no one else can use the term. It when I first read that, I thought, oh, is this about the eastern coyote? How interesting, and of course it
Yeah,
isn't, and that's just fine.
yeah, and I mean like um yeah, I just thought that mixed wolf thing, right? Because my dad's white, right? So I'm like, mixed Métis. So there's an amount of like I wanted to explore that, like, and he like the main character thinks his mom is a wolf the whole play, and then finds out that she's been a coy wolf actually this whole time, and that his grandpa's also, and that which is not necessarily a reveal I experienced in real life. I always knew my mom was Métis. I always knew my grandpa was Métis, but I just thought it is an interesting thing that gets revealed to a lot of Métis people. And I just thought it was like kind of a fun thing to play with in that allegory. I saw we have something in the chat here. What is it? What is this?
Yeah. So we have a comment from Mato Christie saying, all of my questions have been answered but covered by this awesome conversation. Thank you. We also have a comment from Ron from saying, firstly, thanks so much, Lee, for doing this. Nextly, what are your thoughts slash habits slash experiences about adding in other writing mediums, i.e. fiction, screenwriting, etc., to your practice, both for fun, the challenge, and possibly financial purposes?
Yeah, it's interesting. A part I don't like about writing, and that I do like about writing theater, is that in writing a book, you have to tell all this stuff about the clothes and the attitude and the face they're making. And in theater, you just write the stupid words, and then actors make the faces. And designers make the costumes. So that part of like writing the whole world, like what I like about a play is I don't actually have to do it all. I'm actually just doing like kind of this words part, and then the group is going to come up with the specifics of the rest of the world, right? Like I know there's going to be trees, but the designer is going to let me know what those trees look like, and I'm going to say, yeah, that looks good. Let's keep going. So there's something about theater that's why I like theater over like fiction or novels or anything like that. I get interested in it every now and then, but my current thing is like I barely have time to write the plays I want to write, let alone coming up with a like actually hashing out, because how like I'm always like this is a book I could write, but it's like some ideas are just like what if you hash this out, it's actually going to take you a long ass time to figure out how to do this. And then for film, I don't like the medium of film as much. I know that's similar to theater where you have the team who's going to help hash out all the other stuff, but I don't know, this is going to sound really snobby. I just think theater is better. Just think theater's better. I think there's stuff that film does a lot better than theater, but I've done a little bit of film, and I just like in like university, not like professional stuff, but like I and in Alberta there's lots of people who it's like they're on that train show, that Western train show that was happening. So they all had to have big stupid beards for like 5 years. Every actor had a stupid beard because they were all trying to get on this train show. And I was like, and I know that's the actor side of it, but on the writing side, I don't know. Like my friend Nathan Howe, he has his master's in film writing, and he wants to write a movie for us to do as a two-handed little indie film for the two of us to do. And he was like, "Do you want to help write it?" And I was like, like it just wasn't interesting to me. But as far as the financial side of it, I'm like, yeah, there's more money in film. But there's more money. You make more as an entry-level gardener for the city of Whitehorse than you do as artistic director at Guandac Theater by about
Oh,
by about $30,000. So if this is my thing that I'm always telling myself, if financial is ever the main reason I'm doing something, I need to go to an industry where there's actually money, because I could make a lot more money in 1 year landscaping for the city of Whitehorse, than I could artistic directing and doing my side plays and publishing a thing and acting in plays with my sister and being in Yvette's new play. Like this is one of the most full years of art I've ever had, and it's like I don't think I would change it. So I don't know. That's kind of a weird answer, Ron. I hope that helps, or not helps, but I hope that answers your question.
I wonder, I don't know about you, Colin, but I fuck up all the time, constantly. Ron says thank you, yes. I fuck up constantly. And I wonder if you I think that like a really healthy part of growing as an artist, and for anyone who watched last week, yes, I am stealing this question from Santiago, is embracing failure. So I wonder if you could speak to a moment in your career or in your practice that you felt like, oh, yeah, this really wasn't it, and how you learned from that, and what you learned from that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, it's like, okay, this is because I also come from a sports background. I was a nationally ranked swimmer when I was 18. I was really good. So this is a sports background thing, I think. But like, I really don't have failure as an option.
Okay.
Like I win no matter what. You know what I mean? Like the whole and like again, it's because in swimming, like you're the whole idea is you're not racing the other guys in the pool. You're racing your own best time. You already know going into it. It's all written down on paper that you can look at before you go into it, what everybody's best time is. You're just trying to beat yourself because if that guy's 5 seconds faster than you, you cannot set your goal to beat him. You're not like it has to be to beat yourself. So there's just something about that that I think has I've brought into my theater practice where it's like I kind of never, and this sounds so stupid. It feels so stupid saying this, but like I feel like I haven't failed. Like sometimes we don't get the grant and we don't get to do the project. And that kind of feels like a failure. Like I feel like I let the team down. I feel like these people who kind of rely on me for some of their employment through the year, like I feel like I've let them down. Um, sometimes we haven't gotten Koi Wolf out to Calgary yet because no one's picked us up and we haven't gotten the funding together. So I feel like I'm kind of letting my aunties who live in Calgary down because they haven't seen it. That kind of feels like a failure. But it also is like an ongoing project. I continue to pitch companies. I continue to seek out resources. I continue to try to put tours together to get Koi Wolf or my other work to Calgary. Um, so so in my work, I think that whereas like I just try to frame my goals. And again, I'm always the producer, so it's like we have no money, so it's an indie production, and we are rescaling our expectations to be an very indie production. Or holy shit, we got $180,000 of funding for our rural Yukon tour, so we're gonna build theaters in every single community, and we're gonna figure out like how much pipe and drape and how many lights we need to rent. And we're gonna rent a big ass U-Haul and build a theater in every community hall in rural Yukon and present the show there. Right.
Mm,
So, and like, I know. So because I saw the list of stuff you asked the last week and I saw that that one was on there. And I think like one of the big failures for me is like if the relationships get fucked up,
yeah.
that would be a big failure. And so like I've been on projects where like there's a lot of friction and it leads to the relationships getting fucked up and then people not working together or not talking to each other and again, there's not a lot of us. And the longer, like I've talked about all these out options already, right? Like, or at least options to make me more stable. So we're already like pulling apart, right? There's people are leaving the industry. A bunch of people died from COVID, right? So like the industry is already small and can get smaller. And I think when we start to have these moments of like, I don't work with so and so because of a thing that happened. And often it's like a policy or a procedural failure that led to friction between people, that led to a fight, that led to no talking, that led to whole groups of people having to walk on eggshells. Like I feel like that's a failure of a project, right? Low attendance or like and like, I don't know. I think this is conceited. I think all my work is good. So I don't, nothing I've put forward have I then been like, this was shit, right? Like sometimes I feel like Koi Wolf is corny and kind of embarrassing. And like, what if people think I'm a furry? And then also I'm like, I think it's really, I know it's hilarious, right? And then also I'm like, I think it's a really powerful play. I think it explores grief. I think it's a really cool revolutionary play. I think like most people who talked, you know what I mean? So like, I think it's both of those things. Um, and yeah, when I perform it, there are moments where I'm like, this is corny. And then we do it for a high school, and a student comes up and is like, I've never seen a Métis story. It feels so much like my story. I feel really connected to this, da 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 da. So like, I don't know. And obviously, like, yeah, I feel like heartbreak, yes. Failure, no, right? Something bad happens and your little heart breaks and you feel really bad and then you have to keep going, right? You don't get to stop, right? And again, this comes back to the swimming where like that guy who on paper is faster than you, he's going to beat you. So
Mhm.
don't race him, race yourself, but you're still going to watch him out ahead of you, right? And that can be hard, but it's like you have to really put that out of your head. I will also say I was terrible as far as that. I was always just racing people. And my coach would always be like, I can tell you're racing so and so. Stop racing him. You need to swim your own race. And I would be like, but I got a best time. But so that was always the thing where like I'm always trying to remind myself like it's that comparing, right? And I don't know. And obviously, like I think I feel like I'm qualifying my no failures answer, but I do try to really reframe it around like steps, right? Like this is just a step along the way, and sometimes you're going down and sometimes you're going up. Um, I mean, maybe like if a play didn't go, like at Guandac, we had a show that had a bunch of policy issues and friction, and it almost didn't get performed or tour at all. I feel like that could have been a failure. But again, we really as a group just buckled down and navigated it and made it happen. So I don't know. Does that sad answer? I think again, heartbreak. I really think heartbreak you're gonna get a lot, right? Like I think getting a no on a grant and not being able to do your project isn't failure. I think putting a play up and the critics being like it wasn't perfect is like whatever. Who gives a shit? 9 times out of 10, we're on a shoestring budget.
Mhm.
At least I'm not here to make perfect plays, right? I'm here to make impactful plays. I'm here to make plays that make people feel seen or included. Like, so perfect has never been one of those things for me. And so I always feel like all my plays, all the projects I've worked on at Thumbs Up have been a success because the goal is like and even with Coy Wolf, like the goal was like, I need to finish this play. I don't fucking care if it's bad. I don't fucking care if no one sees it. I got to do this because this is something that like I've kind of set my mind to. Um, and that's getting me through this huge amount of grief that I'm experiencing. So like that was a success. And then it got published and people saw it and it toured Rural Yukon and it got remounted. And I'm having this conversation because of it, right? And like but like I think a lot of it could have been a failure because like I didn't achieve half the goals I set out. It didn't have a bunch of the stuff. Originally, my original goal for the play again was like one guy changes the course of history. He proves that one guy can change it all. And like in real life, I was watching me not be able to change anything, right?
Mhm.
I'm one guy. I can't actually do anything. And the grief, right? So I don't know, so it could be argued that I failed in the play that I originally set out to make, but it achieved so much more than I could have dreamed, right? Like I really never thought it would get published. That was a crazy surprise to me. I sent it to Playwrights Canada Press, and then they didn't answer for a year, and I'd like totally like been like, it's not happening, you know? And then Annie emailed and was like, "Hey, sorry I didn't get back to you. We'd love to publish your play." And I was like, "What the fuck?" Like it was so cool. I'd never thought it would actually get published, um, or anything. So yeah, so failure is fake. Failure is a bad attitude. Type of stuff my coach would say, right? Like anytime I think about failure, I just think about this freaking coach that I had where he was always like, "No, that's not a thing. It's not a thing. Failure is not a thing. Unless you let yourself down." That type of shit. Um, you know.
Yeah,
So
totally.
anyways,
We're getting into our last few minutes. I have one more question for you, but before I ask that question, I realize I should have plugged this earlier. Hi, everybody. Come back next week. I'll be talking to Anusri Roy about her play Little Pretty and the Exceptional. Very exciting. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming with Colin Wolfe. Yeah, so you've mentioned several times through this conversation that you're working on four new plays.
yeah,
Can you
yeah,
tell us about like, can you give us like a little peek behind what
yeah.
are they?
Yeah, one of them is called Back in the Saddle. It's about brain injuries and about not giving up, actually. So it's a father-son duo. It's in a way it's my companion piece to Coy Wolf because Coy Wolf was about my mom. So it's kind of my play about my dad. And he has brain damage from falling off a horse when he was 17-ish. And so it's a play about a rodeo dad and a son who drives amateur rally car racing. And the dad had experienced a fall and comes back and he's wearing a helmet. He start like in his small community, this is not a true story. Isn't actually what happened to my dad, but this is how I'm framing it. He's the first person in his community to wear a helmet while doing rodeo stuff instead of a hat, cowboy hat. And so he gets a lot of flack from his community for it, but like he experienced a whole head injury, blah, 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 blah. So then the son experiences a vehicle role doing the rally car stuff. And he gets a bit of PT. He doesn't experience an injury, but he gets a bit of PTSD about getting behind the wheel. And then it's doing like a juxtaposition of these two stories. And about the dad helping him get back in the saddle by telling his own story. So there's gonna be like a timeline thing where we're kind of flashing back and forth between these two times to show this story moving forward. And we're gonna see how it was it was the dad's like sister or uncle or something who helped him move forward. So this is like a generational thing of like you get it's tough, but you do get back in the saddle. You try again, you find ways that work for you. Maybe you have to adjust something, maybe you know. And so yeah, it's about getting back in the saddle, and about brain injuries and growing up with a parent with a brain injury.
Is this one
um
that's going up in the fall?
no, no,
Okay.
that one's going to take a bit more. That one's a going to be a 3 or 4 hander, and going to take a bit more development.
Okay.
Um, I'm just entering kind of the first writing phase in a Jenny House residency I'm in this month in Whitehorse. Um, and then the other one that's going up this fall is currently it's just called Lumberjack Bennett. And it's a one person show. It's going to some fringes and some smaller festivals in the prairies. And I'm building it up to my lightweight one person show that I can get into a festival. And then if people like it, I can be like, if you like this, you'll like Coy Wolf. And then I can try and get Coy Wolf or one of my other shows in. But everyone I pitched Coy Wolf to was like, we need something smaller and cheaper and smaller and cheaper and cheaper and smaller and cheaper and smaller. And I was like, okay, it's a
Wait.
three-hander, costumes already built, sets already like, all right, cheaper and smaller. So one person show about a lumberjack. He moves to the north. His girlfriend dumps him. His dog dies. His roommate kicks him out, and he gets fired from his job all in the same week. And the only thing he has left is his truck and his chainsaw. So he drives up to the Yukon to start a wood harvest business. And so it's partly that didn't happen to me, obviously, but the starting a wood harvest business and all the quirks that go along with that did happen to me. So it's kind of exploring that. It's a 60-minute one person show. And it's all about finding community in unlikely places because he does all this stuff and he's like, I hate it here and the people don't like me. And then towards the end of the play, he realizes, oh, this is actually part of community building, as there can be a bit of friction as you work your way in. And so he finds a new place of belonging. And then there's a play called Deal. It's about being a drug dealer. This is play number 3. It's about being a drug dealer. It's in its early phases. It's based on interviews and some real experience, because the weed wasn't always legal here, right? So some of us have met drug dealers before. Um, so it's about drug dealers, and about, lucrative activities and lucrative financial options when that's your only option, why you might fall into that. And then also why you might fall out of it. And it's like the story follows somebody who gets moved out of selling weed when it becomes legal in Canada. And so that's what ultimately moves him out of the black market of weed. And then the fourth play is called Hypothermic, and it's a sci-fi future play where Earth is freezing over, and it's a guy in his truck, and he's driving across a tundra, and he's hoping he has enough gas to get across to the next community, and if he doesn't, he'll probably die from hypothermia.
I love all these guys who are driving.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys driving. I know.
It's great.
Yeah, the trucks, you fix a truck, you drive a truck, and then suddenly it permeates all your plays. Um, well, so for the play where it's the rodeo dad and then the rally car driver, I was asking my dad, and I was like, "Doesn't that sound cool?" And he was like, "Wouldn't it be more cool if the son was an amateur wrestler?" And I was like, Maybe, maybe it's kind of cool, but I kind of like the driving." So there's
What if you had
also
a
an
cool
idea of it.
car?
Yeah, there's also an idea of it being a wrestler. So but I was like, I feel like there's less back in the anyways, no, he's getting back in the ring, it's still there. It still would work fine. But so that's why that one's still in early development. I've still got to talk to my dad about it a bunch and um hash some of these things out.
It sounded really well developed already. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. And I'm pitching a bunch of, I mean, I've pitched companies out that way before and it hasn't led to anything. But my new show will also be pitched to them. So maybe I'll get out there with something in the next couple of years here.
We're at our time, Colin. This has just flown
Yep,
by. This is wild. Wow. Thank you so much for chatting with us.
of course. Lovely to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you everybody who came to be our audience. Yeah. Goodbye now.